Zapotec beliefs, rituals, and traditions. A deep dive. The people of Monte Alban and the Valley of Oaxaca. The Cloud People, their gods, their 260-day sacred calendar, their shamans, their dead, and their living traditions today. Personal Reading Series, May 2026. Haligricity, or IQ Productions. Contents. Introduction, Who the Zapotec Are. Part 1, History and the Rise of Monte Alban. Part 2, Zapotec Cosmology, the Structure of the Universe. Part 3, The Zapotec Creator Gods in the Pantheon. Part 4, Cosijo, the Lightning God and Rain Deity. Part 5, the 260-day Sacred Calendar and Day Signs. Part 6, the Ouijatao, Zapotec Shamanism and Spiritual Specialists. Part 7, Ancestor Veneration and the Living Dead. Part 8, Sacred Sites, Temples, and the Built Environment. Part 9, Zapotec Ritual, Offerings, Prayer, and Ceremony. Part 10, Death, Burial, and the Zapotec Afterlife. Part 11, the Gilagetza, Sacred Reciprocity as Living Practice. Part 12, Living Zapotec Traditions Today. Part 13, Zapotec and Haligricity, Where the Paths Cross. Introduction. The Zapotec are one of the great civilizations of the ancient Americas, and one of the least known outside of academic circles. While the Aztec and Maya received most of the popular attention directed toward pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, the Zapotec were there first. Monte Alban, their great hilltop city in the valley of Oaxaca in southern Mexico, was one of the first true urban centers in the Americas, flourishing for centuries before the Maya Classic period and over 1,000 years before the rise of the Aztec Empire. The Zapotec called themselves Biena, the Cloud People. They understood themselves as descending from supernatural beings associated with the sky, clouds, and rain, a self-conception that shaped their theology, their relationship to their landscape, and their understanding of death and the afterlife. Today, over 400,000 Zapotec people live in Oaxaca, making them one of the largest surviving indigenous groups in Mexico with a living linguistic, artistic, and spiritual tradition that has endured through conquest, colonization, and centuries of pressure to assimilate. This guide explores the full depth of Zapotec belief, their cosmology, their pantheon, their sacred calendar, their shamanic specialists, their relationship with the dead, their understanding of sacred reciprocity, and what their tradition offers to a synthesized spiritual path today. History and the Rise of Monte Alban. The Zapotec civilization emerged in the valleys of Oaxaca, Mexico approximately 2,500 years ago, though the cultural foundations run even deeper into the pre-ceramic and formative periods of Mesoamerican prehistory. The Oaxacan Valley System, a complex of 3 interconnected valleys formed by the Sierra Madre mountain ranges, created a microclimate of extraordinary fertility and a natural geography that made it a center of cultural development from the earliest periods. Monte Alban, the first great city. Around 500 BCE, the Zapotec built one of the most audacious urban projects in the ancient world. They leveled the top of a mountain at the junction of the 3 Oaxacan valleys and built a city on it. Monte Alban sat at 1,940 meters above sea level, with commanding views of all 3 valleys. At its peak between 300 to 700 CE, Monte Alban housed perhaps 25,000 people and controlled a regional population of 50,000 or more, making it one of the largest cities in the ancient Americas. The city's layout was deliberately astronomical. Its main plaza is aligned with specific celestial events, including the zenith passage of the sun. The buildings that surround the Great Plaza include temples, a ball court, a unique arrow-shaped building aligned to specific star risings, and a series of carved stone monuments called danzantes, actually depicting sacrificed or slain war captives, as evidenced by their contorted postures and the water scrolls associated with them. Zapotec writing and the calendar. The Zapotec developed one of the earliest writing systems in the Americas, predating the Maya writing system by several centuries. Zapotec script is found on stone monuments at Monte Alban and other sites from as early as 500 BCE, recording dates, names, and historical events. The Zapotec also developed or refined the 260-day sacred calendar that would become the foundation of sacred timekeeping across Mesoamerica. Contact, conquest, and survival. The Spanish conquest of the Zapotec heartland began in 1521 to 1522 CE, led by Francisco de Orozco under Hernan Cortés. The Zapotec offered significant military resistance. The fortress city of Mitla was never fully conquered, and the Spanish ultimately relied as much on epidemic disease and political manipulation as on military force to establish colonial control. Catholic missionaries systematically attempted to destroy Zapotec religious practice, replacing their temples with churches and transforming their sacred sites into Christian holy places. What the Zapotec achieved in response to centuries of pressure is remarkable. They did not simply preserve their traditions secretly. They wove them into the colonial Catholic framework, creating a syncretic religious and cultural practice in which Zapotec deities were honored under the names of Catholic saints. Zapotec ritual calendars were maintained alongside the Christian calendar, and Zapotec shamanic specialists continued to practice their healing and divinatory work within the nominally Christian community. This synthesis is still alive today. Zapotec cosmology, the structure of the universe. Zapotec cosmology understands the universe as a layered living structure animated by sacred forces that pervade all of existence. Like other Mesoamerican traditions, the Zapotec conceived of the cosmos as having multiple vertical levels, but their specific articulation of this structure reflects their mountain landscape, their agricultural relationship with rain and maize, and their understanding of the dead as continuing to inhabit and influence the living world. The vertical structure. The Zapotec cosmos is organized vertically into three primary levels. The heavenly realm above is the domain of the sun, the moon, the stars, and the rain gods, the forces that determine whether crops will grow and whether human life will be sustained. This realm is also where the most powerful dead reside after achieving their full spiritual potential. The earthly realm is the world of human habitation, the valley floors, the mountain slopes, the rivers and springs that are the practical geography of Zapotec life. Each significant feature of the landscape is understood as spiritually inhabited. Mountains, caves, springs, and certain trees are living sacred presences, not merely physical features. The underworld is not a place of punishment, but of transformation, the realm through which the dead travel, and in which they continue to exist in relationship with the living. The Zapotec word for the underworld translates roughly as the place beneath or the interior of the earth, a womb-like space of gestation from which new life can emerge. The four directions. Like all Mesoamerican traditions, the Zapotec organized sacred space around the four cardinal directions, each associated with specific colors, deities, calendar associations, and qualities. The center is the most sacred point, the place where the vertical axis of the cosmos intersects with the horizontal plane of human habitation. In a Zapotec village, the central plaza occupies the cosmological center, the point where the living community is most directly connected to the divine. Pi, Nisa, and Kwai, wind, water, and earth. The three primary forces of the Zapotec cosmos are wind, water, and earth, the animating principles that, in their interaction, make life possible. Wind carries the sacred breath of life. Water is the gift of the rain gods, sacred, scarce in the dry season, and absolutely essential for the maize that is the primary sacred food. Earth is the living body of the ancestors, the place where the dead are buried and from which the living are fed. Connection to heligricity. The Zapotec cosmological understanding of wind as the primary animating force of life parallels the haligric recognition of life force under multiple names: Ki, Prana, Nuaifre, Ka, Ash. The haligric synthesis recognizes these as different cultural names for the same living current, and the Zapotec Pi belongs in this lineage. The Zapotec three-level cosmos as an interpenetrating living structure also parallels the Druidic three realms, the Norse nine worlds organized on Yggdrasil, and the Heliopolitan upper world, middle world, underworld, independent perceptions of the same cosmic architecture. The Zapotec creator gods and the pantheon. The Zapotec pantheon is rich and complex, not a simple list of deities, but an interconnected web of divine forces, ancestor beings, and nature spirits whose relationships and interactions structure the sacred world. Zapotec deities are not always clearly distinguished from powerful ancestors or from the deified forces of nature. The boundary between a god, a great ancestor, and a spirit of the mountain is deliberately permeable. Kozana and Huichana, the creator pair. The Zapotec creation theology centers on a divine couple who are the ultimate source of all life. Kozana is the male creative principle, the creator god who breathed life into the first human beings and established the cosmic order. He is associated with the earth's generative power and with the ancestral lineage of the Zapotec people. Huichana is the female creative principle, the goddess of birth, water, fish, and the regenerative waters from which all life emerges. She is the divine midwife, the great mother, the source of both human births and the annual return of the rains. The Pitao, the great divine forces. The Zapotec divine forces are called Pitao, a word that encompasses deity, great supernatural being, and sacred force. The Pitao are not separate, independent beings so much as different expressions or aspects of the sacred power that pervades the cosmos. Several Pitao are known from colonial period accounts and archaeological evidence. Zonaxi Quikuya, goddess of death, and the underworld Zonaxi Quikuya rules the underworld realm to which the dead travel after death. Unlike many Western underworld deities who are feared and propitiated, Zonaxi Quikuya is approached with respect and relationship rather than dread. The Zapotec understanding of the dead as continuing members of the community makes the deity of the underworld a relative of sorts, the divine steward of the beloved dead. Offerings left at tombs and in funerary ceremonies are directed both to the ancestors themselves and to the divine keeper of their realm. Beto, god of wind and breath. Beto is the deity of wind, the sacred breath and animating force that makes life possible. He is associated with both the physical wind that brings rain clouds from the sea and the spiritual wind breath that is the life force of all living beings. Beto's domain is movement, communication across distance, and the invisible force that animates what might otherwise be mere matter. He is also connected to the spirit world, wind being understood as the medium through which spiritual presences move and communicate. Koshijo, the lightning god and rain deity. Koshijo deserves his own section because he is not simply the most important Zapotec deity, he is the theological center of Zapotec's sacred life in a way that parallels Tlaloc for the Aztec and Choc for the Maya. Understanding Koshijo is understanding the Zapotec relationship with the cosmos, the iconography of Koshijo. Koshijo's iconographic signature is immediately recognizable in Zapotec art across centuries. A being with a broad, upturned nose, a split tongue, and eyes that combine human and supernatural features. He is often depicted wearing a headdress incorporating elements of the sky, rain, and lightning. In funerary urns, the distinctive Zapotec art form found in tombs throughout the Oaxacan Valley, his image appears in hundreds of variations, confirming his status as the most commonly invoked divine presence in Zapotec ritual life. Rain as the gift of the divine. In the semi-arid mountain valleys of Oaxaca, where rainfall is seasonal and drought is always a possibility, rain is not background weather. It is the gift on which life depends. The Zapotec agricultural calendar organized all major rituals around the rain cycle: ceremonies to invite the rains at the beginning of the growing season, ceremonies of gratitude when the rains came, ceremonies of appeasement when they were withheld, and harvest ceremonies of thanksgiving when the crops had been brought in safely. Koshijo and the mountains. Mountains in Zapotec sacred geography are understood as the homes of the rain gods, specifically as the places where the clouds gather and from which the rains descend. This makes the mountains living divine presences, not merely landscape features. The great mountains of the Oaxacan valleys are named and addressed as sacred beings. The mountain is the rain god's body. The cloud that wraps its peak is the god's breath. The springs that emerge from its flanks are the god's gifts. Rituals conducted on mountain peaks, still practiced in various forms today in Oaxacan indigenous communities, are direct communication with Koshijo in his most immediate manifestation. Lightning as transformative power. Lightning in the Zapotec understanding is not simply an atmospheric phenomenon accompanying rain. It is the visible expression of divine power, the moment when the sacred force of the sky makes itself unmistakably visible and audible in the physical world. Those struck by lightning and surviving were understood as specially marked by Koshijo, touched by the divine in a way that conferred both spiritual power and spiritual responsibility. In some indigenous Oaxacan communities to this day, surviving a lightning strike is understood as a calling to the shamanic or healing vocation. The 260-day sacred calendar and day signs. The Zapotec sacred calendar, called PA, is a 260-day ritual cycle consisting of 20 named day signs combined with 13 numbers, combined with the same calendar structure as the Maya Tzolk'in and the Aztec Tonopawali, a pan-Mesoamerican sacred timekeeping system of extraordinary sophistication. The Zapotec may have been among the first to develop this system, given the antiquity of Monte Alban's astronomical orientation. How the calendar works. The 260-day cycle is generated by the combination of 20 named day signs with the numbers 1 through 13. Each day has a specific name that determines the energy, omens, and divine presences associated with it. The cycle of 260 days is neither the solar year nor the lunar month. It appears to be related to the human gestational period and to specific astronomical cycles, though its precise origin and meaning are still debated. The 20-day signs. Each of the 20-day signs in the Zapotec PA carries a name, an associated creature or force, a ruling deity, and a specific quality of the day's energy. The 20 signs cycle through the calendar endlessly: alligator, wind, house, lizard, serpent, death, deer, rabbit, water, dog, monkey, grass, broom, reed, jaguar, eagle, vulture, movement, earthquake, flint, knife, rain, flower. Each sign appears 13 times in the 260-day cycle, creating 260 unique day identities, birth names, and destiny. In traditional Zapotec practice, a person's name was often taken from the day of their birth in the Paya calendar, making one's birth name simultaneously a sacred identity, a statement about one's relationship to the divine, and a map of one's spiritual gifts and challenges. The Paya day of birth was consulted by specialists to determine auspicious times for ceremonies, marriages, building projects, and major life decisions. This is not deterministic fatalism, but a reading of the energetic context in which specific activities would be undertaken, similar to astrological consultation in other traditions. the 365-day solar calendar and the calendar round. The 260-day PA was used simultaneously with the 365-day solar calendar. Every 52 years, the two calendars completed a full cycle together. This 52-year period was a complete century in Mesoamerican sacred time, the calendar round. The end of a calendar round was a moment of tremendous spiritual anxiety across Mesoamerica. The gods might not choose to renew the world for another cycle. New fire ceremonies marked this threshold. Connection to halagricity. The Zapotec paye, and Mesoamerican sacred calendrics generally, is one of the world's most sophisticated examples of what halagricity honors in the Wheel of the Year, the recognition that time is not a neutral container, but a structured field of different qualities, in which different energies are available at different moments. The haligric Wheel of the Year maps the 8 primary energetic gates of the solar cycle. The Zapotec paye maps 260 distinct energetic day qualities in a sacred cycle that encompasses the complete spectrum of divine energies available to human experience. Both are tools for living in conscious alignment with the actual rhythm of sacred time, rather than imposing a generic human schedule on a world that has its own timing. The Huillatao Zapotec shamanism and spiritual specialists. Zapotec religious life was served by a range of specialized practitioners whose roles combined what Western culture tends to separate into distinct categories: priest, healer, diviner, midwife, calendar keeper, and spiritual counselor. These specialists were not a separate priestly class removed from the community, but were embedded within it, known personally to those they served, and often serving as hereditary specialist families across generations. The Huillatao, calendar diviners. The Huillatao were the ritual specialists most associated with the sacred calendar. Their primary function was the maintenance and interpretation of the PA, the 260-day sacred calendar, and the application of its knowledge to specific human situations, determining the most auspicious day for a ceremony, reading the birthday of a newborn to understand their character and destiny, advising on the timing of marriages, building projects, and agricultural activities. The Huillatao function was typically hereditary and required years of training. The calendar itself had to be memorized completely. Not merely the sequence of day signs and numbers, but the complex web of associations, omens, presiding deities, and contextual meanings that made each specific day name combination a distinct spiritual reality. A skilled Huillatao could hold the entire 260-day cycle in memory and apply its teachings with the precision and flexibility that comes from genuine mastery rather than mechanical consultation of a reference. The curandero A, sacred healer. Zapotec healing was understood as a spiritual as much as a physical practice. The curandero or curandera works in the tradition of sacred healing that combines plant medicine, prayer, ritual cleansing, and divination to address illness at its root, which may be physical, emotional, spiritual, or relational. Illness in the Zapotec understanding is often caused by spiritual imbalance, by susto, by invidia, by the ill will of the dead, or by disrespect for the sacred forces that govern one's life. The limpia is the most widely practiced Zapotec healing ritual and remains in common use throughout Oaxaca today. It involves passing herbs, eggs, or other cleansing objects over the patient's body while praying and invoking divine assistance. The egg absorbs negative energies from the patient's energy field and is then broken into water to be read for diagnostic information. This practice combines energetic medicine with divination in a single integrated act. The Nehual, the animal spirit. The Nehual is the animal spirit counterpart of the human being, a specific animal whose fate and life force are understood as connected to a specific person from birth. Knowledge of one's Nehual confers protection and responsibility. Skilled spiritual practitioners could work with their Nehual consciously, and the most powerful shamanic figures were believed capable of shape-shifting into their Nehual form. The Nehual tradition is ancient, widely distributed across Mesoamerica, and still alive in Oaxacan indigenous communities. Connection to halagricity. The Huillatao tradition, specialists who hold sacred time knowledge and apply it to specific human situations with precision and flexibility, is one of the most complete ancient examples of the specialist practitioner role that halagricity honors in multiple traditions. The Ovate in Druidry, the Babalawo in Yoruba Ifa, the Vedic astrologer in Hinduism. All of these are practitioners who have invested years in mastering a specific sacred knowledge system and who serve their communities by applying that knowledge with skill and integrity. The Zapotec Limpia and the Halagric Silk Reiki GPAC energy work both operate on the understanding that the human energy field can accumulate distortions and blockages that require skilled, intentional clearing, and that this clearing is as much a spiritual as a physical practice. Ancestor veneration and the living dead. Of all the elements of Zapotec religious life, none is more central, more persistent across time, and more alive in contemporary Zapotec communities than the relationship with the ancestors. The Zapotec do not regard the dead as simply gone. They are understood as present in a different mode, still connected to the living community, still accessible through prayer and offering, and still actively concerned with the welfare of their descendants. The dead as living community members. In the Zapotec worldview, death does not sever the social bond, it changes its form. The beloved dead continue to inhabit their ancestral territory, continue to influence the fortunes of their descendants, and continue to receive the care and attention that relationship requires. Neglecting the ancestors, failing to feed them, address them, clean their graves, or include them in family celebrations is understood as a genuine spiritual harm that can result in misfortune, illness, or the withdrawal of ancestral protection. Funerary urns and the ancestral presence. The extraordinary funerary urns found in Zapotec tombs, ceramic vessels in the form of deities, ancestor figures, and supernatural beings, were not merely grave goods but active ritual objects. The urn containing or associated with the remains of a powerful ancestor made that ancestor's spiritual presence available to the family in a concentrated, accessible form. These urns were sometimes kept in household shrines rather than remaining sealed in tombs. The ancestor's presence was portable and domestic, not confined to the burial site. Dia de los Muertos, living Zapotec tradition. The Dia de los Muertos celebration that has become internationally known, most prominently in its Oaxacan form, is the living descendant of pre-Columbian Zapotec and other Mesoamerican ancestor veneration practices, transformed and enriched by its encounter with the Catholic All Saints and All Souls days that the Spanish colonizers placed at the same time of year. In Oaxaca, the celebration on October 31 through November 2 involves constructing elaborate ofrendas for the returning dead, visiting and cleaning cemeteries, preparing the specific foods that the ancestors loved, and spending the night in the cemetery in the company of the beloved dead. The Zapotec understanding behind this practice is precise. At this time of year, the veil between the living world and the world of the dead becomes thin enough for the dead to return and spend time with their families. The ofrenda is not a memorial. It is a welcome home for actual returning presences. The marigold flowers whose scent guides the dead home, the candles whose light shows the way, the favorite foods and drinks placed for the returning ancestors. These are hospitality offered to guests who are genuinely expected and genuinely arrive. Connection to haligoricity. The Zapotec ancestor practice, the understanding that the dead are not gone but present in a different mode, that the relationship requires ongoing attention and care, and that the dead can return at specific times of year to be with their families, is the most direct Mesoamerican parallel to the haligoric ancestor altar practice. Both rest on the same foundational recognition. The boundary between the living and the dead is permeable, and the maintenance of relationship across that boundary is a genuine spiritual practice with genuine spiritual consequences. The Zapotec ofrenda and the haligoric ancestor altar are expressions of the same sacred hospitality, the offering of food, light, water, and loving attention to those who are not physically present but are not gone. Sacred sites, temples, and the built environment. Monte Alban, the sacred mountain city. Monte Alban is not merely an archaeological site. It is the spiritual center of the Zapotec world, still actively visited, still understood as a sacred presence, still a place where important offerings are sometimes made by contemporary Zapotec and other Oaxacan indigenous practitioners. The Great Plaza, atop the leveled mountain, is one of the most atmospherically powerful sacred spaces in the Americas, surrounded by temples and pyramidal platforms, open to the sky and the cloud-wreathed mountains of all three valleys, with a sense of being simultaneously at the highest point of the human world and at the threshold of the divine. Mitla, City of the Dead. Mitla is the second great Zapotec city, located about 40 kilometers east of Oaxaca City, and served as the primary funerary and religious center in the post-classic period. Mitla is architecturally unique in Mesoamerica. Its buildings are covered with intricate stepped fret geometric mosaics in stone, creating patterns of extraordinary complexity and precision. These geometric designs are not merely decorative. They encode cosmological meanings about the structure of the universe and the organization of the sacred world. Caves and springs as sacred portals. In Zapotec sacred geography, caves are the entrances to the underworld, openings in the earth through which communication with the dead and the earth deities is possible. The mountains of Oaxaca are limestone, riddled with cave systems that the Zapotec understood as the living mouths and wombs of the earth. Springs emerging from hillsides and mountains were the gifts of the rain gods, the divine water that had traveled through the sacred interior of the mountain body to emerge into the human world. Both caves and springs were sites of